to the Sublime Soiree. I'm Sue, and today we're going to be continuing our conversations about hope amidst the harrowing. Those seasons where we all experience at one time or another.
That's right, Sue. Hi, everybody. I'm Linda, and today we are going to be talking with a guest who really understands the idea of living through crises and understanding what it is to have hope amidst the harrowing. And she is very excited to share the hope that she has discovered with us today, because the hope that she has discovered not only allowed her to get through those circumstances, but really has carried her much further beyond.
We are happy to introduce to you Rebecca Studer, speaker, encourager, and founder of faithoverfear.help. Rebecca, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, ladies, for having me. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to share my story. It's actually God's story, though. And just thank you for being willing to listen and allow me to hopefully share some hope and encouragement to others that are struggling and hurting. I was born and raised in Massillon, Ohio. That's where I currently am living. Growing up, and probably up until high school, I was a pretty quiet kid. I listened, and I think my parents would both say I wasn't really any trouble. My older brother Ryan and I, we spent our childhood swimming in the pool competitively. So we were big swimmers, which partially explains my love for water. I just love it. And I swam up until high school. And then halfway through my freshman year, I wanted to quit, and I wanted to join the speech team, which completely threw my parents off guard because I was this quiet kid. And they thought, you want to join the what team? And so I joined the speech team, and I really just gravitated toward the arts in high school and got involved in speech and drama and choir and show choir, and really just kind of found my niche there and excelled at those the rest of high school. I went on to college, and actually when I was in high school, when I was 16, I met my future husband at 16, which obviously I didn't know. I didn't know he was going to be my husband at the time, but started to date him, and then went on to college and graduated college and earned my bachelor's and master's degrees there. And then we got married and enjoyed marriage for a few years, decided to start a family. And we have two amazing daughters now, Hannah, who's 13, and Eva, who's 10. And, right now we're just in that crazy extracurricular stage with our kids. And it's just like, it seems like a constant revolving door. It's after school, we have a short time to do homework, and then it's here and go there, and you feel like you're living out of your car half the time. But it's so fun, and just seeing our girls, find their gifts and talents and excelling. And my husband and I are really plugged into our church and our school system and community. And so it's just a crazy busy stage, right now. We love to watch movies, our family. We love to play cards, board games. We are blessed to have a little lake house up on Lake Erie that's been in our family since I was born. And so we love to enjoy the beach and get up there when we can. And we love, like I said, we're plugged into our church, and we love just serving our church, going to church together as a family, praying together. And that's us in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. Now you're going to be telling us about some pretty significant storms that you weathered beginning in 2006. And you have described life a little bit prior to 2006. But I wonder if you would have some adjectives that you could share about just what was life like? How did life feel prior to 2006?
Adjectives it's a great question. Adjectives I would use to describe before 2006 was healthy, normal in my eyes. What normal, I know that's such a relative term. Christ-centered. Those are strong, strong foundation. That was my childhood. I had a great childhood. Christ was the center of our home, and my parents did a great job of raising Ryan and I in that way. We went to church very regularly every Sunday morning, and we were active in our youth group, and my parents served in the church as well. And we prayed in our home. We talked about God and Christ in our home. We had our disagreements and fights, but we were far from the perfect family. But in my mind, I thought I had this solid, indestructible family growing up, and with Christ as the foundation, I really thought like, oh, this is awesome. Nothing can tear us apart. It was great. Had a great childhood, a lot of fun memories, and we were the swimming family. So, like I said, we spent so much time in the pool at swim meets, but it didn't last. It didn't stay that way, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Rebecca, we heard a message recently from a local church, and you talk about 3 storms that you have weathered beginning about 15 years ago. Can you explain to our viewers briefly about what those storms were?
Absolutely. Well, the first storm was in 2006. I was 26 at the time, and I got a phone call from my mom a day in August that changed my life. I picked up the phone, I was home, and she said, "You have to go to Ryan's house right away." Ryan lived just around the corner from me. And I knew in her voice, that's all I really remember her saying, but I knew in her voice that something was really, really wrong. And so I hung up, I rushed over, and she met me there, and we had found that Ryan took his life. So yeah, that was the last thing that we expected to witness. So like I said, I was 26 at the time. Ryan was 4 years older than me, so he was 30. And this was the first big crisis in my life. Like I said, growing up, we had disagreements and fights in our home, but we didn't have any major problems. And so this was the first crisis that I was ever hit with. And so it's just, how do I deal with this? And it was, the first time I really felt helpless and hopeless for the first time in my life at 26. So that was the first storm. 7 years later, after that, this was in 2013, my dad unexpectedly came over to my house and sat down on my couch, looked me dead in the eye and said, "I'm leaving your mom." And so this was the second bad storm. And this was traumatizing to me. And the part of the reason why it was so traumatizing is the relationship I had with my dad. My dad and I were super close. I was growing up, I was closer to my dad than I was my mom. Not that my mom and I weren't close, it was just my dad and I were closer. And I was daddy's little princess, and he was my hero, really, growing up. He was my number one hero. And I would even say that I had him up on a pedestal, a high pedestal, probably, well, not probably, I know that I even had him on a higher pedestal than the Lord. I mean, he was up there. So when he came over that day and dropped this bombshell in my lap, I thought, what am I supposed to make of this? And I really thought I was dreaming, and I got hit by a truck. It was just crisis number 2. So it was just completely out of the blue for me. So I was obviously in shock and panic, and that led to my parents being separated for a period of time, and then they ended up divorcing after 43 years of marriage. So that indestructible family at that point was just disintegrating. Like I literally felt like it was falling apart. So that's part of the reason why it was so traumatizing to me. That was the second one. Now the third storm doesn't stop there, although I wish it did. And then after my dad chose to leave, then he started on a downward spiral and was just making some poor decisions. And he ended up getting arrested in 2018. And then in 2019, just a couple years ago, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. And that's where he is right now. So that, solid, indestructible family that I had growing up, I thought I was in a dream. It was just crumbling to pieces. And that's when I, emphasize, after all of this happened, I never felt so helpless and hopeless, because it was the four of us. We were strong, we were solid. And even though my dad is still living and breathing, it's just kind of my mom and I now,
Right.
I feel like I've lost half of my family.
Right.
Yeah. So.
When we were listening to your presentation to the church earlier last year, we of course were struck by these three storms and how harrowing they were, and our hearts were hurting with you. Our hearts were hurting for you. We were identifying with much of your storms. But I think the thing that really jumped out to both of us were these amazing life preservers that God cast out to you in the midst of these storms. And we wondered if you could describe to us what those divine lifelines were and how they helped you.
I'd love to. Before I describe those life preservers, people have asked me, was there a turning point, or when did you start to feel healing from all of this tragedy, and so forth? And I want to say in the fall of 2017, I went on a 72-hour spiritual retreat called A Walk to Emmaus. And that was really the catalyst that transformed me spiritually and strengthened my relationship with Christ. So that was really pivotal for me. On that retreat, I didn't realize how broken I was. I thought I was doing actually pretty well. But I didn't realize how broken I was until God started to put the pieces back together.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a wonderful experience. But after I got home, I knew the Lord wanted me to turn all of this pain into purpose. He had just planted that seed for me, and I knew I wanted that too. I wanted that same thing. Sometimes, our plan lines up with God's plan. It doesn't always happen that way, but he definitely planted that seed for me when I was on that retreat. So as I started to reflect back over the last 15 years since Ryan passed, I just started to think of key lessons that can help others, really, that I learned. And it took some time, but I call them life preservers because, first of all, I have a love for water, growing up in the water like I did, but I love the fact that they're used to protect you and keep you afloat when you feel like you're just sinking.
Yes.
Yeah. So I love that. And so anyway, that's why I call them the way I do. But the first life preserver that he revealed to me was just learning to be at peace with the unknown and not having all the answers. There were so many questions that I asked myself over and over and over again. Why did Ryan take his own life? Why do I have to be an only child? Why are my parents divorcing? Why did my dad have to be sent to prison? Just over and over and over again. And we can drive ourselves crazy by dwelling on those questions over and over again. And in fact, the enemy wants us to. I think that's he wants us to dwell on those, because if we can't find the answers, it can drive us insane and make us feel that much more hopeless. But we have to get to the point of surrendering those unanswered questions. And really, that's exactly what I did. I just got to a point where I thought, all right, I'm not going to let the enemy tear me down with all these unanswered questions. Lord, if I don't have the answers to them, if you're not going to reveal the answers to me, then I'm going to trust you with that. And it's so, so difficult to do that. I'm not saying it's easy by any means to trust him with that. It was so, so difficult, even being raised in the church and growing up, with the strong background that I did. But I just had to trust him. And, I guess to this day, I want to encourage listeners that if God doesn't reveal the answers to you, then consider the fact that God is protecting you or protecting certain relationships in your life, because he knows us best.
Yes.
And so we have to trust that. Like, I think back to, if I would have known the answer of why Ryan took his life, and if by some miracle God would have said, okay, this is why, because of something mean someone said to him or whatever, but maybe if it was a specific individual or a specific situation, in turn, what's that gonna do for me? Well, more than likely I'm gonna be angry at that person, or it's gonna drive a wedge maybe in certain relationships between me and someone else. And he doesn't want that.
Right.
And we have to I had to really trust that, okay, why Ryan did it, that's between him and the Lord. It's not for me to know. And the only way that I got to that point is through the Lord and giving me that peace. I don't know any other way that you can deal with that. If someone finds another way, let me know. But that's the only way that, that I found. And he was faithful. And to this day, even with Ryan's suicide and my parents' divorce and my dad's sentence, I don't need to know the answers to this day to any of that. I'm completely at peace. I don't want to know. I have still an unconditional love for my dad and both my parents. And it's just incredible, the peace that he gives you when you really scream out to him,
Yes.
So yeah, so that was, he was wonderful in being faithful in that way. The second life preserver that he revealed to me, reminded me of, I knew this, but he reminded me of it, is just the fact that he is still a good father. And the cards didn't fall in the way that I wanted them to, and they didn't fall in the way that even God wanted them to. Just being faced with the new reality of being an only child, which I really can't stand. I never wanted that. I still don't. And grieving the loss of my parents, as one unit, he just reminded me I'm still here. And with I described earlier the history and the strong father-daughter relationship that my dad and I had. When he stepped away, I really had to grieve. I didn't have to, I did. I grieved the loss of my dad, who I knew, so there was an incredible amount of hurt and disappointment. And remember, I had him like up here on a really high pedestal, and man, he just crushed me, because I felt abandoned, for good reason. But God never left my side. He never left my side. He reminded me that even though I have been hurt and disappointed by my earthly father, that he never will, God never will, that he loves me in a perfect way. He's
Yes.
never going to disappoint me. And really, he put me in check as far as that pedestal goes, because, which I'm thankful for. And, you know, I had my dad up high and God was underneath him. And I feel like he just kind of put me in check and said, listen, I know that you have a love for your earthly dad. He's a great guy, but I need to be above him. I need to be first in your life. And that's okay. You know, my earthly dad kind of fell underneath him, and he put me in check. I needed that. Yeah, but he did it in a healthy way, obviously. I love the verse. There's a verse here that I clung on to too. It's Deuteronomy 31:6 that says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. So I love that. And that I referred to that, yeah, many, many times, but it's just hard to grasp sometimes God's love for us, because it's just so great and it's so perfect and it's so flawless. And that was one of the things that kept me together while I'm grieving the loss of my earthly dad, you know, and that disappointment. So yeah, he really is a good father. He's awesome.